All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Everybody here, everybody in position. We are a live show that then is fed out in podcast land, and you can listen or watch anytime you want. It's a great technological marvel is what it is. Kim is here.
Kim, how are you?
At her News Nook, which we have festooned with all of the magic of the family life and sort of generic wall coverings, and we try to give it a little bit of a homespun feel. And then Tony, of course, watching all things technical.
Thanks, Tony.
And he has queued up for us a couple of things we want you to see. We have David Cay Johnston on the show today, the Pulitzer Prize winner and Dean of Trumpology. Will comment on any number of things. I think one of the big things, look, the huge thing, I think, on some level, and again, you can back burner it or you can compartmentalize it, is the degree to which the polls sort of begin to show you different things and what do we take from those polls. But the other thing is the magic of the con and how effective a con it has been. I think David has written chapter and verse literally on the degree to which Donald Trump is an unabashed liar, is just the word I was going to say, how he unabashedly misrepresents what's going on. But I don't just mean it as a simple pejorative. He's a liar, he's a this, he's a that, he's a misogynist. You certainly can go off on that jag. But what I think David's written about, and I think what you're seeing, is the degree to which the American people on some level, and I mean a large number of American people, want to be lied to. Tell me about how we're the greatest country on earth. You always hear that. Tell me about how you're the best thing for the economy. Tell me about how you're going to make America great again or get us back to whatever, because that's the lie that I want to believe. The reality is, as you are well aware, that not for everybody, and certainly not in every place, but in many instances and in many places, the economy is robust. We are going through the kind of technological purging, which is scary. And by that I mean more and more jobs are being lost to technology. So AI, automation. You could see this coming 30 years ago. Literally, we were talking about it that long ago. Back then, it was the way robots would replace workers in every industrial facility one could imagine. From steel workers to auto workers, you could see how robotics was going to replace so many. And if you look at seaports, you look at major commercial hubs around seaports, and you see nothing but automation. People are doing different things, and there are fewer people involved in the process. So there's no question that the economy and the environment has changed and is changing, and it's changing in scary ways. But Donald Trump isn't your answer, and it has nothing to do particularly with a flawed economic policy. As I say, if you look at other indices, the stock market, employment rates, et cetera, this economy's pumping. And it's pumping more than any other economy in the developed world. And still, Donald Trump can talk about worst inflation in history, never been an economy so bad. I mean, worst economy in history, you don't even have to go back. When you talk about interest rates, I'm betting that most of the people in our chat remember interest rates that were multiples of this. I mean, 5 times what we're seeing as an interest rate now. During the Carter administration, I don't even know what the interest rates were, but they were massive.
Google it.
18% or something on that level. So my point is simply, These are, again, bald-faced lies. They work on the stump. He gets going, and then he's just serving up these complete misrepresentations. I hate to say lie. Lie sounds like it's like I'm calling him a name. You know, I hate the name-calling thing, but these really are lies that he serves up like a short-order chef when he's out there on the stump, and still the Americans absolutely want to believe it in large. There it is. By the end of Carter's presidency in 1981, home mortgage rates averaged 16.64%. Home mortgage rates have not been this high since the Carter administration. It was an extraordinary thing. By the way, let me digress, and let me throw you a curve, Tony, if I can. Here's the curve. Do you have that pic that I sent you of the guy in the wheelchair, I guess is what he's in? I went to see my mother, and I meant to mention this to you because it's kind of a cool story, especially for those who may have lived through this, some of the older boys and girls. I went to see my mother, and she's in Washington, D.C. There in Washington, D.C., you meet a lot of people just being around Washington, D.C., who have something to do with government, right? I mean, it's a big employer of many people who live in and around Washington. And so at my mom's assisted living place, we were there, and they had a special memorial kind of for my dad and for others who have passed away recently. And afterward, we're just kind of lingering. And this guy comes out in this wheelchair, and he was really sharp on a lot of stuff. He just, like, we were talking, and he was really sharp on a lot of things and seemed like a lovely guy, had like a easy aspect to who he was, you know. And it turns out that he was instrumental. This relates to the Carter administration. He was instrumental in securing the Iranian hostage release during the Carter/Reagan handover. This is him. Sheldon is his name. And we took a picture together. And he was fascinating. And he told me something that I thought was obvious at the time, but you couldn't certainly get anybody in an official capacity to tell you this. And that was that the incoming Reagan administration, you'll recall the hostages weren't released out of Iranian airspace, et cetera, until the actual inauguration was going down. They actually double boxed it so you could watch the inauguration of Reagan while the hostages plane was landing in Frankfurt, Germany, or something like that. I forget the actual, I believe it was literally that almost. So I asked Sheldon, did the Reagan administration, incoming administration, again, not the administration that navigated and negotiated the hostage crisis to conclusion, to release of those hostages, but the incoming administration, the Reagan administration, I asked Sheldon, did they delay, did they contact the Iranian government and in some way delay the release of the hostages until Reagan was actually being inaugurated? And he said to me, well, he more or less said yes. And he said the way it's done is with money. You know, you're talking about tremendous amounts of money that was released to the Iranians. It was their money, you understand. We had frozen their assets, but unfreezing the assets was a huge lever in these negotiations. And if you could make sure that the money actually wasn't unfrozen until Reagan was in, you could help create the impression that it was the Reagan people that actually secured the release of the American hostages in Iran. But that's the guy who was actually very much involved in their release. And it was such a pleasure and honor. And, you know, he's just a guy talking. There he is Wow, that is just so good, Tony.
Wow.
That is Tony. There he is at the time, back when he was a younger guy working on that. Anyway, it was very cool to meet him, got the picture, and I wanted to share it with you. And I thought that little bit of a morsel of reflection on it was really interesting.
It looks like he's wearing a gold medal.
It It does. Sadly, I think it's one of those I've fallen and I can't get up things. You know what I mean?
Okay,
I think it's a button where that I think it's a, right. You see it, it's like a.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff. Thank you. It was a little something from my trip to see Mom. And,
The Mark Thompson Show.
I love everybody who joins us here. I had emails that I wanted to respond to. I usually respond to them early on. You know,
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Yeah, and
Can I just tell you that, speaking of positive things, you're looking very dapper this morning.
Well, thank you, Kim. I'm wearing a jacket that sort of matches the shirt that I'm wearing.
Yeah, kind
and
of like an olive green look that you've got.
I've had yes, it's an olive look. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I've had women particularly comment on it. I mean, in the chat or in emails. And I respect female input or gay male input. I respect immensely, and I usually will follow that. So if I get women saying you look great in this thing you're wearing, or I have a gay man say it, then I go with it. Yes. And so I receive such input. Yeah. Am I right, Tony?
It's such a true thing. If that is true, like with women, with guys with women, it's like if a pretty girl says, "Hey, you smell nice today," that is my deodorant for the rest of my life, and that's all there is to it, and that's it.
Hey, baby, you like this smell? There's a lot more where that came from.
But it's true.
Yeah, I got a whole bottle of this stuff back at my place. But that's the reason I'm wearing it, because literally, as Tony said, you know, I had the right combination of women and gay men tell me that it looked better.
Yeah, I agree.
So thank you. Spencer says, I'm gay and it's better than your other jacket. Thank you. All right. So
Spencer has spoken.
Spencer has spoken. So now I have to find, there was a very long and I thought well-reasoned notion about health care from one viewer listener. And I'll get to that when I've got more time. Somebody else sending me links to MAGA stuff and talking about how delusional they all are. Okay, I get it. This is interesting. Hi, Mark. This is from Randy, who shows up in our chat a lot of the time.
I like him.
Yeah, I was wondering if you might want to give us your thoughts on Kamala Harris skipping, at least at the time of this email, which is just, I think, last night it came in. The Al Smith charity dinner in New York in October. I heard tonight that she's the first presidential candidate since 1984 to decide not to attend. I watched CNN tonight, and there were a couple of Democrat opinion people indicating that they thought this was a mistake on her part for various reasons. I found myself agreeing with them. Randy in San Jose, California. I didn't see the CNN segment, but I will tell you that I think a good argument can be made for skipping it. The Al Smith charity dinner. The Al Smith charity dinner is a benefit. I think it's a Catholic event, but it's a benefit event. And isn't that a priest or something there in the wardrobe of a holy man?
Yes.
And this Al Smith dinner then is a benefit, but it's famous for having the presidents and the wannabe president, in this case, they're at the dinner, and they kind of, it's a little White House Correspondents' Dinner-y back and forth, meaning there is written material, and they make fun of each other, and they're self-deprecating. So here's why I think it's not a big deal. I think the political landscape is changing a lot. I think there is a degree of toxic discourse that hasn't changed much. And if you look back at Donald Trump at that Al Smith dinner with Hillary Clinton, I just remember it being full of, basically he abandoned the good-natured back and forth, and he went for, real shots, right? It's like we're supposed to be playing like this, and he hits you with a. So I don't know with this candidate that stuff works. It falls a bit into the category of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which I also have a mixed feeling about. I think it's great to celebrate journalism. I think it's great to have the benefit for the White House Correspondents' Dinner, but I feel as though it's maybe past its expiration date, given the way that politics has changed. Now, it may be back to where it was, where everybody's laughing. You could see Hillary Clinton there in that shot that Tony pulled up. But I think it's past its expiration date. And so I see, not only politically, okay, because I'm sure you can do the calculation and go, well, politically, I just don't think it helps us to be at this dinner. So maybe the Kamala people are thinking that. But I would say that essentially you don't gain anything, particularly as a candidate, by being there. Catholic charities don't need your help to raise more money, just to speak to the charity part of it. And I think that the politics in America is changing. And I'd suggest that this kind of thing may have to change along with it. So put me in the category of, no big deal. And this is certainly, missing the Al Smith dinner is certainly something that no one focuses on except for us in this podcast in the last 4 minutes and those inside the Beltway. Now, maybe right-wing media picks it up and go, how could she not be at the Al Smith charity dinner? It's ridiculous. So if you can get the right-wing media saying it, Sean Hannity says it, Laura Ingraham says it, that echo chamber says it loud enough that the echo now extends to the Washington Post saying it and the New York Times saying it, then all of a sudden it becomes an issue. Yeah. But the reality is it's not an issue. It doesn't matter to anyone that Kamala Harris is not at the Al Smith charity dinner.
Well, Trump has already said that the Democrats have been horrible to Catholics. By the way, President Biden is Catholic, but they've been horrible to Catholics and they don't like Catholics. And now he says, Trump, who will be at this dinner, it's sad but not surprising that Kamala has decided not to attend. He said she hasn't been very nice to Catholics. So I think it goes to, is this dinner important? No. But could he then, snowball it into something about anti-Catholic rhetoric? Sure. Yeah, probably.
I mean, Trump can't even spell Catholic. Give me a break.
This is a word from the Lord, and he's not happy.
Okay, well, all I would say is that, when asked to quote his favorite Bible verse, you'll remember that? He couldn't even think of one. He couldn't even think of a bluff.
They're all really good. Yeah.
Corinthians number 2 or something. He didn't say anything. And then the next time he was asked, he came up with Corinthians number 2 or number 2 Corinthians or whatever. I mean, he didn't even have that right. So it's laughable, but apparently it's a thing. So anyway, in answer to your question, Randy, I think it's a nothing. But as we predicted, they're making it into something. So there was also a question.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Mark and everyone, I usually listen live. Sometimes I get interrupted, but I was waiting for Courtney last week. Nothing. This week, nothing. You have it in what's happening today and last week, I believe.
I don't know what's take it out. I took it
What's
out.
happening today? What is that thing?
In the show description.
I see.
Where we list what's, what we have coming up.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Cheers, Francine. Well, we just got back from the East Coast.
Yeah.
And Courtney had a business meeting and couldn't make True Crime Corner. But I want you to know that she is on it for next week and she is immovable. She will be here. So that is an absolute guarantee. And thank you for noticing that Courtney was not in the mix. She will very much appreciate that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
As you know, she over-prepares for the whole thing. She spends days working on her segment. Now, there is a bizarre fact, and it relates to what I was saying at the beginning of the show, which is sort of that lie to me aspect of the American body politic. I mean, it reminds me of so many relationships, so many songs. There's literally a song written. I mean, was it Johnny Lang wrote that song, Lie to Me? Go ahead and lie to me. I mean, there are more and more lyrics, if you actually go back and knock around, have that. My friend Allie Willis wrote a song for Maxine Nightingale called Lead Me On, meaning in the lyric, it's just tell me that you love me. Just lead me on. I just want to hear it.
Isn't there a Bonnie Raitt song? Lie to me, I promise I'll believe.
Yeah. I mean, it's so I'm not saying it's an articulated notion among people en masse, but I would say we do this thing. I think the best example, I was talking to someone about this not so long ago, is this myth of American exceptionalism. We like to think, well, we're the most powerful country on earth. We're the best country on earth, the best economy on earth. We've got the best constitution on earth. This is the best life in the Western world. We're the best. And we grow up with that notion, right? Right? Superman is the character that fights for truth, justice, and the American way.
Of course.
So,
what is he going to fight for the Russian way?
Well,
what kind of communist are you?
You could just say he fights for truth and justice. You wouldn't have to throw in the American way. All right, I'm just saying.
Of course you have to.
So,
Superman is American. I mean, he crash landed in America for a reason.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. So the idea is that sense we have that we're the best is carried over into a lot of the rhetoric and political speech that you hear. And the idea somehow that we have the best of everything here is something that on some level we carry with ourselves, I would say, again, as the body politic. I'm not suggesting that each and every person watching or listening has that feeling. Okay, so to the point. When you get a politician like Donald Trump who says, you know we're the best, and you know we had the best, and we're going to go back and get the best if you vote me in. We're going to make us the best again. But these guys have ruined the best. We had the best, but their 4 years of presidency, while they're presidenting for 4 years, it was all bad. And he creates this idea somehow that the economy's bad, that stuff is bad, the border's bad, etc. And some of it may land with you. You may go, yeah, well, the border is bad. We have to figure out a better policy. And as you know, Trump kneecapped the deal that would have changed the border. But on the economy, you can look at things and go, well, but look at the price of things at the grocery store. Even though those things likely don't have a connection to the current administration from the standpoint of any policy, you could still say, hey, that statement lands with me. But more than anything, the thing that Trump has done, and he's done it effectively, and this is the point that you'll see in a moment, he has effectively said that if you elect those guys, Kamala Harris and her people, for another 4 years, the economy is going to go straight down, dropping like a stone. Everything's going to be awful. There's an apocalyptic economic notion that's being peddled by Donald Trump. I think it's laughable. Look at how quickly we came out of the pandemic. Look at how the economy was resuscitated under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, if you want to link the two, as they always are now. Look at all the progress made. And look at where the economy is now. Look at the stock market at all-time highs. Look at your 401ks, et cetera. All right. So it flies in the face of evidence, but somehow peddling the fear is working. And Tony, you have a little bit, not only on that, but on the fact that Trump's basic tactic of just playing to generic fear is an effective one. And he's associated positively with somehow staving off all the bad stuff that he invents is going to happen in a Harris administration. Go ahead, Tony, run a little bit of that. This is short.
Forgive me, I just want to stretch this out. The economy is the number one issue in all three states, not by huge margins, but 26%, 28%, 25%, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina. Immigration second in Arizona, abortion third. immigration and abortion kind of trade almost in a tie for second and third when it comes to the other battleground states. So the issues, economy and immigration, we know they're Trump's issues, and abortion is a Harris issue. So voters were asked in this poll, what candidate best represents you on your issue? So it could be the economy for many voters. It might be something else. Just generically, who's the candidate you trust on your top issue? And look at this. Again, I'm just going to stretch this out. On just the generic top issue question, it's narrow, but Trump leads in all three states, right? So people are saying, I'm with him. He's best for me on my top issue. Here's what's even more damning, Aaron.
Stop
we know
right
issue
there.
number one is...
I just want to be clear as to what this is. You can back it up a little bit so we don't miss, but I want to be clear about what that was. It's a generic top issue. It's not, they don't give you the issue. They say your top issue, whatever it is. Pick a card, any card. Mm-hmm. Who's better on it? And in a generic top issue, for some people it might be women's reproductive freedoms. For some people it might be security. For some people it might be the border. Trump scores above Harris. It's an extraordinary idea, and it's an extraordinary poll result. Okay, Tony, back to it. Sorry.
What's even more damning, Aaron, we know issue number one is the economy. And just look at this. And we've seen this again. This is only one poll. Don't overinvest in any one poll, but we have seen this data in other polls. This is a constant problem for the vice president. Who's best on the economy? Trump by 14 points leads in Arizona. Trump by 12 points leads in Georgia. Trump by 13 points leads in North Carolina. It's the top issue, and Trump has a huge edge. That's the problem for the vice president.
And I would say to you that when you look at Pennsylvania, which is a state that is critical, as you know, you don't need me to tell you, every other pundit is telling you, every other political strategist is telling you, if Kamala Harris can win Pennsylvania, she really has a shot at the White House. Without Pennsylvania, very hard to get there. So both candidates are aware. This is why Trump is spending every single instant, essentially, in Pennsylvania relative to his other stops. And it's why Kamala Harris, as well, is focused on Pennsylvania. So yesterday, Trump spoke at an event in Pennsylvania that talked about the predatory power of China. And he showed, essentially, in his populist economic arguments, like, it's us versus China, and he's got a zero-sum view of that, or at least that's what he peddles, that he predicted mass bankruptcies in that agricultural sector and said that essentially the rural communities, and this is, remember, he's now in rural Pennsylvania, will take a huge hit if he's not president. You'll have those bankruptcies, you'll have an invasion of immigrants, and it will take down all of you. I mean, he literally said, all of you farmers will lose your farms. There'll be mass bankruptcies. It was extraordinary, Kim. I mean, he was painting this apocalyptic picture.
Well, it turns out it doesn't matter what your occupation is, whether you're a farmer, whether you're in business, whatever audience he's sitting in front of, he'll tell you you're going to lose your job, your industry will collapse, this will be it. So I guess it's just this widespread message then.
Most politicians, as noted here, court voters by offering them an optimistic vision, peddling hope and promises of change. Democratic nominee Kamala Harris seeking to sweep away Trump's somber picture of America, they note here. An America in crisis. She talks about joy and a new kind of, quote, opportunity economy. Trump, though, mostly dishes out fear and threats. He, for instance, warned Americans at the debate with Harris that, quote, you're going to end up in World War III. In the town hall that he did on Fox News, he said, quote, this country will end up in a depression if Kamala Harris becomes president, like 1929. He brands Harris a communist, calls her a comrade. And then he also seems to try to scapegoat he scapegoats any number of communities if he loses, right? The Democrats. But then he tried to scapegoat Jewish people, which was an extraordinary thing. He said the Jewish people would be partly to blame if he loses in November. This is what he's trying to say. I mean, this is so heinous, only because of the history of persecution of the Jews. But he is trying to say, if you're Jewish, you should vote for me because I'm on your side. I'm on Israel's side. I'm the best friend to the Jews. I'm the best friend to Israel. But if you don't vote for me, then you're one of the reasons I didn't win. And it's also a reflection of, this is the trope, this is the despicable, bigoted notion that Jewish people have a split loyalty, right? The loyalty is to Israel and the loyalty is to America. And if you make them choose, they may choose Israel over America. It's BS. But that's the crap that he is slinging out there. Most important, I would say, is, though, the fear. Playing fear with the economy, with lifestyle, with America, and then, as I say, with that idealized, romanticized notion of your America, it seems to be working. And that's why that poll was so key. Your generic issue, who's better? You name the issue in your mind. Who's better, Trump or Harris? And by a distinct margin, at least in that poll, it was Trump. So, on some level, the fear card is working for him.
I was going to say, speaking of the fear card, what do you think you respond better to? A message of hope or a message of fear?
Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, I don't mean to say that I don't respond. I mean, I like to look at the substantive issue, and if it's like, I'll give you if it's grim, it's grim. Like, I'm a tree hugger, right? So I respond to tree hugger issues. So if you tell me we have to stop this now, otherwise you're going to see a toxification of the soil, even in organic farms. By the way, I have that story. We'll run it this week. It's extraordinary. There's so much toxic stuff in the environment that even organic soil is polluted with a lot of these awful toxins that show up in the environment. So maybe that fear of that does motivate me. I mean, fear is a great motivator. So if I had to choose one or the other, hope or fear, I'm guessing fear probably would work on me too. But you couldn't just sling some fear crap at me and think you could get away with me personally. I mean, I'd need to see some evidence,
Right.
And I think in the case of Trump, he's just slinging it. There is no evidence. But he's got the crowd and he's got the amen corner, and that all works for him. Sure. And, there's one last thing I would say about this fear thing. There's a reason anthropologically that we respond to fear more than we do to hope. In general, we are wired to respond to fear more. That's a survival instinct. If you talk to poker players, they can remember, poker players can, the hands, huge poker hands, in which they were losers. They missed some sign that they were supposed to have. They lost all their money on one particular hand or a series of hands and series of moments they can remember with incredible clarity. Same poker players, you ask them about beating somebody in hands like that, and they don't have the recollection. I can speak to this with great authority because I'm one of them. You remember the hands you lose more than the hands you win. And the reason for that is your survival depends on avoiding things that can hurt you. And so fear is such an effective tool in gaining popularity and gaining support. Keep me away from that which can hurt me. And Trump is doing it in spades right now. And if you'll pardon the mixture of metaphors, and it looks like, at least for the moment, in swing state polling and in general polling, that fear-mongering is working. So, I know I have him...
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this guy who comes in on Tuesdays. Longtime tech writer for USA Today, left. Now he does Photo Walks TV on YouTube. How about it for Jefferson Graham? Yeah,
Hey.
look at you.
Hey.
What's the latest in Techland, Jefferson Graham? You You've got a lot of stuff going on. I saw you with your phones. I watched your channel, so I saw you debuting the slow-mo, telling us how effective everything is. You seem excited like a kid with a new toy on this 16. Yes. What can you tell us?
Well, what I want to know is, how did you fare? How did you fare with your new phone? Were there any hiccups?
I don't get my new phone till October 8th. So they made me order it, but they wouldn't have it for me. It's a hot item. So, you with your connections and stuff, you get it right away, but I don't have it yet. So I still have I have the crappiest cell phone there is. I would chuck this thing into the Pacific for $1. It's awful.
Well, not yet. Not till October 8th,
not yet,
please.
Right.
Okay. So the big question everybody wants to know is, do I need to upgrade now? And if you bought the iPhone 15 Pro last year, you do not need to buy the 16. The improvements are incremental, though I will say it is a better camera. I did photos on the 16 and the 14 at a concert, and I'd say about 25% brighter and sharper. But if you have a 14, 13, 12, or 11, I would recommend getting a new phone this year. It's up to your budget and whether you feel it's worth it to spend the money, but I think you get a better device and definitely a better camera.
Yeah, it's funny. We have a 12 in our house because Courtney won't give up the phone. She just likes it. She said, I don't need it for anything. She's got her own. She said, until they stop supporting it,
Yeah.
She seems wedded.
And the one that they're not supporting now is the 10, otherwise known as the X. That one is not being supported. But there's several different types of people. There's one like Courtney who says, my phone is fine. I don't need a new iPhone. And that's fine. That's great. All right. More power to her. Right. Then there's people whose phones are falling apart and they feel they need to buy one. And that's cool. And then there's the people that just like to spend money. That just
they like to have the latest. They like to have the latest thing. They don't.
Yeah, they also like to spend. They just get a really good feeling about it.
Wow, I don't know. William Lundgren says he likes his 12 also. I still have. How about these people? You don't have a category for them. Randy says I still have a phone that's no longer being supported. Works fine for me.
And there's people that have Microsoft Windows XP on their computers, and Microsoft's done everything possible to tell you not to use it, but it still works. They turn on the computer and it works, and great, right? I mean,
Just Give Me the Truth says, I love my iPhone 7. I don't like the new one, says Just Give Me the Truth. When they took the buttons away, wow, that was a big thing.
The home button.
The home button.
And I understand, because I really like the home button too. I've gotten used to the new one. But what are you going to do? This is what they make. There is no home button on a Galaxy. There's no home button on a Pixel. This is how it is. It's all touchscreen. I will say that, I sat down and I did a piece about 16 things that are different about the new phone. It was a struggle to come up with 16, but I did it. And one thing is the glass is really a lot stronger than it used to be. I used to break them every year, crack them. And I have dropped that phone probably 30, 50 times over the last year, and I have no cracks. So that's one thing they're doing better. And of course, the battery is way better than it used to be, as you will find out, Mark, when you get your new one.
I'm looking forward to it because this battery is ridiculously poor. Is this segment sponsored by Apple, is what Lazard wants to know, or
No.
Lizard Breath?
No.
I like to call it Lazard Breath because in honor of the receiver in the NFL. Now
they did send it to me to review.
Okay.
So
now I want to get to something which speaks to an issue with the phone. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new bill just signed into law yesterday that's going to require California schools to restrict or ban student cell phone use. This will affect the K through 12 students, and there are more and more pieces of evidence associated with the distractions that cell phones produce in the classroom. And yet, and here's the interesting thing to me about this, because it's indisputable that this thing is a distraction, and it's a net negative in the classroom. You need the kids focused. It's hard enough to get them to focus, but many parents are outraged by this, and they're showing up to school board meetings and they're going, "You're not taking my kid's cell phone away."
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, there's no reason that any kid has to have a cell phone at school during school hours. Correct? There's no reason. What possible one are you going to come up with? Well, they could use it as a calculator. What? There's no reason. Now, the parents want them to have it so they can call them at 3 and say, "I'm ready to be picked up." Or if somebody comes in with a gun and starts shooting, they want to be able to call home, right? I mean, that's a real thing in today's world. So those are two things to consider. But number one is education. There's no reason to have a phone at school. And I don't know how they're going to enforce this. I don't know how they're going to take the phones away from kids when they walk in the door. That sounds like a nightmare. That sounds like it's going to add an hour to each day. But I'm not running a school, so I don't know.
Well, it really doesn't add an hour to every day. I mean, I remember going to the first Dave Chappelle concert, and it was at the Mandalay Bay, meaning the first, when I say the first Dave Chappelle, I mean the first time I'd been at a show of any kind where I was asked to check my phone. It was the Chappelle show. It was a long time ago. And they had a really easy way to do it. They had essentially a sleeve, and everybody knows this. You've seen them at concerts. They have them in more and more venues. Comedy shows are famous for them. And you put your phone in this thing. They lock it. It's like a little sleeve, and they let you hang on to that, okay? And they say, if we see anybody using a cell phone here, you will be thrown out of the arena, and, you know, your phone will be erased or whatever it was. So it took no time. I mean, they had to fill an arena of 15,000 people. It wasn't that it was so easy. So I think they could do a similar thing at the beginning of every day. Let the kid keep the phone. Let the kid keep that little sock or little, it's a little thing you slip in. It's like a cover. It's locked. And at the end of the school day, it's unlocked. I don't really see it as much of an issue from a logistics standpoint.
Okay, so they come into school, they throw the phone in their backpack. If they're seen pulling the phone out during the day, they get detention. They stay after school. They get a demerit. They get a note home, something like that, right?
Right.
Okay, great. Let's do it.
Okay. I've got a lot of good ideas. If you like that, I've got tons more. Yes. Oh, my God. This is the easiest school board meeting I've ever attended.
Yeah.
What else is happening in the world of tech?
We were going to talk about AI and has the bloom come off AI? Because there's a report that one of the top investors, believe it's Goldman Sachs, said maybe AI is not going to be as big as some people are saying, which is a valid argument when you look at some of the things that our friends, to go full circle, what is Apple selling as far as artificial intelligence, why you want to buy the new phone? Forget the fact that those aren't even ready yet and won't be ready till the fall. But what are they? They're going to help you write. They're going to proofread your copy. They're going to transcribe your phone conversations. A lot of things that, does anybody care about this stuff? I mean, Google has a bunch of this stuff in Google now, where in Gmail, they'll complete your sentence and things like that. I don't need it. I don't know about you, Mark, but I don't need it.
Yeah, I mean, there is something of an arms race going on in the world of AI, and you can speak to it. And there is a lot of spending and a lot of investment that's going on in that arms race. And I think what that investor was saying was essentially adjacent to what you said from a user standpoint. He was saying from an investor standpoint, I think maybe the world of AI is overcooked. You know, it's overheated. We're too, as usual, excited about this from an investment standpoint when the limitations might be real.
Yeah, because how are they going to make money? They're going to sell services to you and me, and they're going to ask us to subscribe and pay $10 a month and $20 a month and $30 a month, yet more subscriptions to do things that we maybe don't even care about. I will admit ChatGPT is pretty cool, and I use it. And a lot of times I will just bypass Google and go to it because, when you search something, you actually get an answer from ChatGPT as opposed to a bunch of ads that are irrelevant to you. And you can keep the conversation going. And I also like the creating digital art. Not good for artists, but it's good for people like me that need a quick illustration for our blog at no charge. And then they started charging for it. I stopped paying for it, but I guess I would pay for it. But I don't know. I don't see it being of Netflix proportions, the population willing to subscribe to AI services.
Well, AI services may ultimately, I love my BlackBerry, says Blue Spark, Z10. And I love my Duraforce, is it?
Well, Kyocera, it's a phone from about 10, 15 years ago.
Here's $1 to get rid of yours, for me to chuck my mine into the ocean. Thank you, Blue Spark, for the super chat.
Big shout out.
$10 super chat. Appreciate that. Yeah. Last thing on this, and before we have to say goodbye, it just seems as though there are different aspects of AI. You've talked a lot about I'm going to call it retail way that we use AI, I need a picture, I need you to look at my term paper, give me a snappy paragraph about such and such AI. There's another AI, isn't there, Jefferson Graham, which is associated with going through medical records and looking at a series of MRIs and coming up with different medical diagnoses, or with a legal opinion, or with reviewing document review on the level of maybe 20,000 or even 40,000 pages of documents that have to be culled for some piece of information. That really can't be done in any kind of timely fashion by a person. And so this AI is breakthrough. That strikes me as the additional areas in which it can be used. And the last thing I would say is the machine learning AI is scary good, and it's getting scarier good every hour.
Okay. I will agree that it's good. And I will also agree that it's gotten a whole lot better. But like, is it in my little world, like asking it to write things for me or to come up with headlines or descriptions of a YouTube? I don't know if you're doing it for your YouTube. I'd still rather do it myself. It's still going to be better. It's an idea. I get to use their ideas, but I have to rewrite it because it's pretty canned and pretty hard to look at.
Yeah, we don't use it, but it's a yeah, I suppose it is. This is from Edward Lee, and this is an interesting question. Thanks for the super chat, by the way.
Big shout out.
May the tech expert please say a bit on the pagers, the exploding pagers. That was a wild thing. So many pagers went off, so many personal devices, then ultimately walkie-talkies. But speak to the pagers, if you would.
Yeah, I don't know how they did it. It sounds like out of a James Bond movie, doesn't it? Like something that you would dream up years ago. First of all, I didn't even know that pagers still existed. Did you?
Well, I didn't until this incident, but they explain the use of pagers because they're trying to get around cell phones because they feel that Israeli intelligence can monitor cell phones and GPS, whereas the pagers leave them anonymous and there's no GPS associated with it. That's how they emerge in this scenario.
Part of me would want to say, this is great. We're going back to old technology before the era of Google and Facebook tracking us everywhere, right? But I have no idea how they did this thing. It sounds ingenious. I'm just amazed that they were able to pull it off. And if they could have exploding pagers, what's next?
Firefighters and hospitals still use pagers, says Quesadilla 79. Yeah.
Okay.
And on Viewfinder's president says there are watches that have to be confiscated too, lagging on the proverbial shoe phones.
At school.
Yeah, that's all related to school. Old tech is still good tech, says shadow producer Calvin Wong. Yeah.
It is, and they're classics. And I maybe we should run around and take a whole bunch of pictures with the iPhone 4 and see how it looks. And it's probably great.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like running around with a Brownie camera and saying, "Look what I can do." They're still good.
Love that you stop by every Tuesday. You can find him Photo Walks TV on YouTube. Find him, subscribe to his YouTube channel, and we wish you all the best. I love you're watching your iPhone tips and all the rest, and that's the latest Jefferson Graham performing with his iPhones. Jefferson Graham and his dancing iPhones. Magical.
Thank you, Mark.
All right,
Good
sir.
seeing you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thank you for your support, everyone. Please purchase a new shirt so you can look dapper again, says Sally. Sally doesn't like the, wow. For the $40 super chat, though, I will say a big shout out to you.
Big shout out.
And thank you for that. Is she dumping on my current shirt, Kim, or is she saying what?
I'm not sure, but she did it twice. So she wants you to buy a fancy shirt, I guess.
Oh, that's
hence the amount of the super chat, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday, says Elwin. One of the best names in our chat is Elwin.
Big shout out.
Love having him here, and thank you for that. $5 super sticker and $3 super sticker from Spencer, who's always there with us. Spencer's
Big shout
so
out.
great. All of you are so supportive. You know, we're a crowd-funded show. Thank you, Wes. I got your long email that I will integrate into a future show. I believe it was from Wes, and I think it was about healthcare, and I will talk about that on a future show.
Big shout out.
There's just a lot there, and it would take a real segment to build it out, which I promise I will do for you on a future show. So thank you for every way you support the show. Patreon and PayPal, the links are below every video. We are essentially an NPR PBS model, which is one of those, if you like this program and want to see it survive, please support it. So the key is the links and also the way you jump in with super stickers and super chats. So appreciate that. So thank you for that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Why do I love Tuesday? It puts me in touch with the great Pulitzer Prize winner, multi-best-selling author. Now he is a professor at RIT, a place where smart kids go to be taught by even smarter professors. How about it for David Cay Johnston?
Hello, Mark.
Hello, sir. Wow. I'll get to all the Trump stuff and the politics in a moment. I wanted to get to a question about Ukraine because it does appear as though there's some serious changes in the way that war is coming down and how the entire conflict is now spilling into another area with Russia actually being affected in ways they weren't early in the war.
Yeah, it's very interesting how the news in Gaza and other issues have just pushed Ukraine off the front pages and out of the network news. In the last week, the Ukrainians appear to have essentially destroyed an entire Russian airbase by sending drones that blew up its stores of munitions, magazines full of explosive material, sometimes called a munitions dump. Then they've done it again with serious damage. And President Zelensky is in New York right now because of the United Nations meeting. And he has apparently been pushing every American politician he can, every supporter, to get the Biden administration to further ease the handcuffs we've put on him. We've made it clear that we're going to give you these sophisticated weapons, but we're going to limit how far inside Russia you're going to use them, et cetera. And the new British government clearly is of the view that, we need to ease up these handcuffs, if not remove them altogether. But I think these successes, the Ukrainian military strategy is going to be studied and taught in war colleges 500 years from now. And I say that hoping there is no war in 500 years, but human history says to me probably there will be. But it will absolutely be studied. The tactics and the strategies that this country applied against a big aggressor with far more bodies to throw into the conflict. And one other thing, the Ukrainians are now benefiting from the fact that a number of the generals and colonels have been killed by the Ukrainians. The Russian army does not use sergeants, so they don't have the ability to make quick tactical decisions on the ground. Oh, we can't go this way, let's go that way. And now their army is largely conscripts and convicts. Those are not people motivated to fight, whereas the Ukrainians, despite their very heavy losses, are fighting for their freedom, for their country. And boy, if there's a lesson we should all remember from Vietnam, it's don't get messed in somebody else's property where they see their identity as being at stake. So I think these are very important developments. I'm not sure much will happen before the November 5 election because Putin is hoping Donald Trump gets in, and that will be the end of our support for the Ukrainians. Donald Trump will just say to Putin, go take it. We'll help you. Would you like us to help you? That's even possible. He would try to do that. Whereas if Kamala Harris comes in, I think it's reasonable to conclude that they may not remove the handcuffs on Zelensky, but they will significantly ease up, and the other members of NATO will be much more willing to throw themselves into the fight because they don't want to have what would follow from the loss of Ukraine, which is the invasion of Poland and the Baltic states. And as my relatives by marriage who are Hungarians believe, that Hungary and Slovakia will be in that list of places because Putin has said he wants to put them back into the old Soviet Union.
Yeah, I mean, he wants to put Humpty Dumpty back together again in an aggressive way. It's funny, I was talking to the guy driving us from the airport. This is just 2 days ago, and we just got back from the East Coast, and he is Russian. And he said, I don't really speak super well. He said, my wife is actually very well-spoken in English, and my kids are very fluent. And we took them out of Russia because they wanted my son to go into the war with Ukraine. And so we fled, and that's how they ended up here. And I thought of you because you've spoken of this before, this conscript, this aggressive conscription policy they have in Russia.
Yeah, and we need to recognize that, first of all, the Russian government in writing promised that if Ukraine gave up the nuclear weapons that were based there before the fall of the Soviet Union, that it would never invade Ukraine. So there's a complete disrespect here of a norm that was established. Secondly, everything Putin has been doing is just simply extra legal. And the Russian military, way back to the czars, I mean, I've only read back about their military tactics to about the late 1700s, but they pay no attention to the rules of war. That's why you saw Putin's people deliberately, intentionally bombing daycare centers, hospitals, train stations, going after, in fact, in at least one case, a home for the elderly, going after people who are not military targets. And we need to, if we don't stand up to that kind of aggression, it will just continue. There's no negotiating with Vladimir Putin. He needs to face utter humiliation. And there is some indications, not a lot, but some, that a number of the leadership class in Russia, many of whom are his criminal friends, are deeply concerned about what's happening. And part of that, I believe, is because for the first time in history, really significant and effective sanctions, economic sanctions, have been applied. They haven't completely shut down the Russian economy, but they've severely damaged the Russian economy. The Russians are basically out of foreign currency now. They're making trades, barter deals for things. It's no way to run things on a country level.
Do you see the end game? You kind of note it in what you've just said when you were talking about, total humiliation and total defeat, I guess. But do you see the end game coming in some kind of timetable that is manageable? It already seems as though this has gone on for so long, and I don't know that that you'll get that moment of defeat that you've talked about, like from Putin, where he'll really concede defeat. That's certainly something he wouldn't want to do. Well,
so let's go back to how, what started here in the beginning, almost 2 years ago, 21 months ago or so. Putin thought he would just roll in to Ukraine and take over. And this was seen coming for a long time. If you were paying attention, the Ukrainians certainly knew for 6 months or more that this was in the cards. And they have proven to be a much tougher foe than Vladimir Putin ever imagined. But Putin is on record all over the place, in his own writings, in his speeches, in the staged interviews he does with state media, that the worst thing that happened in the 20th century was the collapse of the old Soviet Union. He intends to put it back together. And well, the evidence suggests at the moment that he probably wouldn't be very effective at that because he doesn't have a very good army. He has a Potemkin army. That doesn't mean that he's not going to do everything he can, if he can succeed in Ukraine, to press on. He's not a democratically elected person. Yeah, he was elected in a totally staged vote. People who live behind what was the Iron Curtain, people I know, both family through marriage and journalists I know and academics and other people I know, just people randomly that I know, they are all very, very concerned that if the NATO, with its support, but not soldiers, not sailors, not airfare, but with aircraft, but with financial support, primarily in terms of providing weapons and electronics that allow you to track the movements of the Russian army and disrupt their activities, that if we don't do that, other Russians are going to come along after Putin, and they're going to seek to restore this. So I don't see at this point any way to end this on a permanent basis with less than the utter humiliation of Putin, to the point where he loses his grip as the modern czar, the dictator in Russia.
Wow. That may be a tall order for a while then.
Yeah.
Because of, and so too, this election season, we're so close to, in fact, there's already voting going on, as you know, in several states.
Right.
And Donald Trump, someone who you know very, very well. You know him from a style standpoint, the way he thinks, from a tactical standpoint, the strategies he employs. He said, of course, that this Ukraine thing never would have happened if he had been president. And then he pivots from that to Gaza. Gaza never would have happened. He is the strongman of the world, and no one would dare upset the apple cart if he were president.
Yeah, there are lots of fantasies out there, and then there are just outright delusions. I mean, Donald always claims these magical powers. I mean, he says he doesn't even have to be president. He can stop the war in Ukraine. Well, stop it then. Sorry, go ahead, stop it. That's just not how the world works. And
he does have that thing, David, where he goes, if you just let me do it, I can have the whole thing over before lunch. Whatever the thing is, he has and yet people
he has are concepts of a plan to do something.
Thank you.
That he doesn't know anything about. The issue here, let's be very clear. This is not, the war in Ukraine is not a war about money. It's not a war about getting oil fields. This is a war about liberty. This is a war about freedom. Are the Ukrainians going to be a free people, or are they going to be under the boot of the Kremlin again? Back when the old Soviet era, when the language was the Ukraine, meaning a district of the Kremlin's jurisdiction. And when you have a war over liberty and there's a clear aggressor who has no reason to do what he did, both in sending his little green men with no insignias into Crimea in 2014, and then saying, I know nothing about this. I have nothing to do with it. Very Donald Trumpian, by the way. I don't know anything about it. And then, of course, as soon as he had control of Crimea, he said, well, of course, those were my soldiers. At its core, that's what we need to recognize, that this is about liberty. Someone's posted in the group, it's a civil war. No, this isn't really a civil war. This is a war of aggression by the Kremlin and the desire to take back. And they thought the easiest target would be Ukraine. I mean, after all, the president of Ukraine is a comedian. I think what Putin didn't appreciate is every comedian who's successful, at least that I've ever met, is incredibly smart. You got to be really smart to be successful at high-level comedy.
The left, it's interesting to me, the far left and the right now, in the face of maybe a Tulsi Gabbard might be a good example, because she's dining out, of course, on sort of a peace platform, as she is a surrogate for Donald Trump.
Right.
They say, they had a president, the Americans undermined that presidency and yanked Ukraine back into sort of NATO scoring position, and Russia was afraid of that. And in essence, then, we in the West provoked this entire conflict. Can you speak to that?
Well, that's the argument that the Kremlin wants to sell. And I was interviewed yesterday by a student journalist who asked me about what I saw as the biggest geopolitical problem in the world, in America. I'm sorry, in America. And I said, I think that Americans don't appreciate the depth to which foreign governments are interfering with and undermining our election. It's not just Russia. And I'm somebody who has literally exposed spies and foreign agents going back more than a half century. I saw it in Michigan. I saw it in Sacramento. I saw it in San Francisco and Los Angeles. And understandably, foreign governments want to interfere with us, just as we have interfered in many other governments around the world. That's sort of the geopolitical chess game at one level. But ordinary Americans really need to understand that a lot of the things they're hearing come out of the mouth of somebody like Ms. Gabbard, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have literally spoken what amount to talking points from the Kremlin that you can take from RT, the Russian state propaganda channel, and other sources, and they don't seem to feel apologetic about that. I mean, there was a time when if you spoke a Kremlin talking point in this country, I'm talking about the late 40s and the 50s during the Great Scare, or the Great Fear, why you would be blacklisted, you'd lose your job, horrible things would happen to you. And now we have a party, the Trumpublicans, who embrace Kremlin propaganda. And they embrace the idea that liberty is not worth defending. And much as I dislike war, I wish we could get to where the movement from, 40 years ago called Beyond War wanted to take us. I don't see it happening in the lifetimes of my, now I guess I can say, great-grandchildren.
Well, it's a remarkable thing. You're talking about something and a trend with the GOP that is quite extraordinary. I mean, they really, the coin of the realm for the GOP for so long was that anti-communist, as you say, a really anti-Eastern Bloc posture. And then somehow, and I think it even predated Trump, but certainly now it's had new life breathed into it. The way we've sidled up to, at least the GOP has sidled up to Russia. As we look at polling, David, I was talking about this in the first half hour. It's amazing that the Trump fear-mongering and his warnings to agricultural concerns in Pennsylvania, where he's spending a lot of time, rural communities, that you'll lose your farms, the immigrants who are coming here are going to essentially be a burden on the economy, and as a result, there'll be bankruptcies everywhere. None of you will have the kind of livelihood that you have now, and it will only get worse. I mean, this is what he's serving up, and there seems to be some traction for that message.
Yes, I think Americans don't pay, as a class, a lot of attention to government and particularly foreign relations. We just don't. Only about 1 in 6 Americans has a passport. And unless you have one of these new enhanced driver's licenses, you can't go to Canada or Mexico without a passport. Whereas everybody in Europe, I mean, virtually 100% of Western Europeans anyway, have passports. And they can travel within the Schengen district, that's most of Europe, freely. But they all have passports, so they can go beyond that, whether they do or not. And so I think in a lot of ways, we don't have a political and social culture that pays a lot of attention. Now, on the polling issues here, I continue to be very, very skeptical of the polls. When I was doing polling to make extra money when I was in my teens and 20s, you would get, 1 in 3 people about to answer the questions. And now you're getting less than 1 in 100, in some cases 1 in 200. And so the pollsters use very sophisticated statistical tools to weight the responses they get. You want to have a random sample of Americans. If you got 1,504, there's a mathematical reason. If it's a true random sample, it'll give you a good feel for what's going on. But the fact that so many people won't answer the questions suggests that the self-selection process is misleading us. And that you see a series of polls that indicate things are going this way, and suddenly there's a new poll that has quite different numbers. That should be a good indication of a big change. The vast majority of Americans made up their minds some time ago about who they were going to vote for in this election. And the number who are undecided, the one thing we know about people who are undecided is that by and large, they are what are politely called low information voters. People who don't know what they're talking about or what they're hearing. And a good example of that is the piece I wrote last Friday. It led the New Republic on Friday it was just an explainer of how tariffs do something that no one else had written about, to my shock. Donald Trump announced he's going to impose a 60% tariff on Chinese goods. Presidents can do that without further action by Congress because Congress has given the president the power to do that. So if that happened and you wanted to buy a Chinese car that costs $10,000 today, you'd have to pay $16,000. Well, that sounds like a pretty good thing to say that people won't buy Chinese cars, except imagine, Mark, that you own a car company. You own Mark Thompson Cars, and you sell them for $10,000, and you get $1,000 profit each time you sell a car. You're not going to keep trying to sell them for $10,000. You're going to raise your price to just under $16,000. So to make the math simple, let's say you raise it to $15,000. Well, that means your profit's going to go from $1,000 a car to $6,000 a car. And you're going to get fabulously rich, even if you only sell half as many cars. Because one of the things tariffs do, the reasons you want to have tariffs if you're an underdeveloped country, why we use them in the beginning of the American experience to build up our domestic industries, is they allow bigger profits to the domestic makers while they figure out how to become efficient and compete with the makers of, say, stoves that were imported from England or the Netherlands or Germany. And even Paul Krugman, a Nobel Prize-winning economist who I did a little bit to teach when he became a columnist how to do journalism, it didn't write or say anything about this other effect. A tariff on Chinese goods, which are also made in America, is an increase in the price of American goods to 95% of the additional cost of the tariff.
There is that piece.
Tony, I don't even see Kamala Harris trying to explain it, and it's not that difficult to explain.
It would. It's funny. It would take 30 seconds to explain it. We mentioned that last week. By the way, there'll be a link to that David Cay Johnston piece in the New Republic under this show, and also under the video breakout of David Cay Johnston, if you're wanting to
and Mark, I'll tell you that from the emails and letters that I got from people, most Americans do not understand that a tariff allows domestic manufacturers to raise their prices. They do not understand that. I also got an email from someone who said, I was obviously a paid agent of the Beijing government for writing this because there are all sorts of other issues I didn't go into, like subsidies from the Chinese government to their manufacturers. Not like we, of course, don't have subsidies for ours. But that kind of response is indicative of how we've gotten away from legitimate, robust, vigorous debate in favor of it's my way or it's a lie. And that very bad for democracy. We should have vigorous debates.
The latest from Trump is that he's saying in relation to tariffs, he'll put a 100% tariff on every car coming into the United States across the Mexican border if he wins the election. Quote, we will put a 100% tariff on every single car coming across the Mexican border. The only way they'll get rid of that tariff is if they want to build a plant right here in the United States with you people operating that plant. He was obviously talking to auto workers. And you know, he's, again, this is at his rallies in these critical swing states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Yeah, so that speaks to what you're talking about. He is hitting the tariff thing hard, and nobody's calling him out on it. And it doesn't take long to call him out on it, but no one's doing it.
A tariff is a form of tax, and it is effectively a national sales tax. And sales taxes are inherently regressive for a very simple reason. If you make $60,000 a year, you're spending almost every dollar you make, and maybe every dollar you make, just to get by. If you make $6 million a year, you're probably only spending a tenth of that, and you're reinvesting and saving the rest of it. Or you're buying assets that will grow in value over time. You're investing your money in other ways. And I don't think a lot of people understand and appreciate that the national sales tax effect of a tariff is to essentially take money out of your pocket and put it in the pockets of domestic manufacturers.
Well, I mean, this is just today, David. Trump telling supporters in Georgia that he would take manufacturing jobs and factories from other countries if elected. He was talking about economic policy. This will get a lot of play later today on the evening news, et cetera. He said he would do this again. He would get these manufacturing jobs and factories from other countries and get them over here. He would do this by lowering corporate taxes, slashing regulations, and granting, quote, free access to American markets for companies that made products in America. Again.
I mean, think how nonsensical that is. American companies already have free access to the American market. I mean, it's just, something we've perhaps forgotten. Donald Trump started this trade war with China. The Chinese then stopped buying American soybeans, corn, and it's the two things they principally buy are soybeans first and foremost, and then some corn. Who benefited from this? Well, Brazilian soybean farmers who now ship their soybeans to China. They ship them, by the way, on very large amount of them on ships owned by the family of Elaine Chao, Mrs. Mitch McConnell, who was transportation secretary under Trump and who was recommended for criminal prosecution. I wrote about her in my last third book in my Trump trilogy. She clearly was using her office to curry favor with the communist Chinese regime on behalf of her father's business. And we are paying as taxpayers billions of dollars. The last time I looked, it was $28 billion a year in subsidies to Midwest soybean and other farmers to make up for the sales that we used to make to China, but are now going to Brazil, with the Brazilians selling the crops. So I'm sorry, if you want to lose American markets and then pay American manufacturers or farmers to make up for that, then I think you ought to vote for Donald Trump, because that's what you're going to get.
In our last minute, I want you just to respond to a couple of things. Randy says, is Trump underpolling like in 2016? In other words, is there more support for Trump, maybe in your view, than people are willing to admit in polling?
Yeah, I mean, because I don't trust the polling here, we don't know. But if you look at the crowds who have turned out and you look at the donations and the number of people who've registered to vote, and the results in I guess there are 10 jurisdictions now where there's been some kind of a vote on matters related to women controlling their own bodies, their reproductive health. All of that augurs very badly for Donald Trump. He says, I hate Taylor Swift. What a strange thing to do. But, apparently as soon as she said, I'm endorsing Kamala Harris, somewhere between 300,000 and 400,000 people registered to vote. That's an enormous number. And what I would think is most significant here is less polling than the really determined and serious efforts by Republicans to block people from voting. I don't know how more un-American you can get than trying to prevent people from voting. But there's been, 500,000 people removed from the voter rolls in Texas. They've sent law enforcement to the homes of some people working on voter registration to try and scare them. In Georgia, in Florida, and a couple of other states, there have been hundreds of thousands of people taken off the rolls. So one thing listeners ought to do, and you've clearly got an audience all the way across the country. In fact, when I spoke at an international conference in Toronto over the weekend, I met people who watch you who are in Canada.
Oh, that's great. Great to hear.
The one of the things that people should do is go see if your voter registration is current. Now, if you live like where I do in Western New York, we don't have problems with dishonest, corrupt, politically inappropriate manipulation of the voter rolls, but that's not the norm in a lot of places. So go check, see if you're actually registered to vote. If you aren't, on election day, you can insist on getting what's called a provisional ballot. You get to vote, they put it in a separate envelope, and then election authorities and sometimes judges get involved, will decide whether your vote gets counted.
Feels like we're going to have judges involved in the settling of this outcome. But I want to ask you, I promise you, this is the very last question about
no
Georgia,
problem.
because you made this point, and I think it's so pertinent and relevant about these last-minute rule changes and last-minute changes to basic voting in so many states. The Georgia hand count that they have now insisted on, if you really read it, it's more than just one hand count. There have to be simultaneous counts. There have to be duplicate counts. They make the count go several times, and it has to come up the same. Otherwise, they have to start all over again. And the last thing I'll just say, and then I'll let you speak, is machine counts are so much more accurate. I can understand why you might want a hand count to check a machine count, maybe in addition to. But machine counts are insanely accurate. That's why they're the default mechanism for banks.
Right. Normally, we use a machine count, and then if there's an issue, we can hand count. This will require meticulous care in counting the ballots. It's going to delay knowing the results, in all likelihood, in Georgia for some time. And of course, Donald Trump's view is if it's after, he's ahead at 12:30 in the morning, then therefore it had to be dishonest. Somehow this was corruptly done. I don't have a problem with paper ballots as long as we as taxpayers spend enough money to accurately count the ballots. And that requires training people in how to do it, because there are little subtle issues that arise. We saw that with the Chads in 2000 and people mismarking their ballots. You're told fill in the circle and people put an X in it sometimes, things like that. They don't follow directions. Before I go, one thing, Mark, somebody in the chat said, we don't manufacture squat in America. Absolutely wrong. There's been a huge increase in the number of manufacturing workers in this country since Joe Biden became president. We are on a tear when it comes to manufacturing. We are building new factories, a lot of them with government subsidies for sure. We are hiring workers in factories. Many of these are high tech. I don't mean computer. I mean sophisticated factories. And this has been one of the big growth areas in the American economy. It's the reason that out of the 20 leading economies in the world, the rest of them are treading water or sliding downward, and the U.S. is surging ahead, way ahead of everybody else. Manufacturing is just doing gangbusters in our country right now, and don't believe anybody who tells you the opposite. And if you don't believe me, the data is all published. Go do a Google search. How many manufacturing jobs by month? In America. What's the value of manufactured goods? What's the value of American exports and imports? All of this stuff is gathered. It is relied on by business. Businesses have a big stake in the U.S. government accurately, as best it can, gathering all this data. We employ thousands of people on pricing and other issues that give us economic statistics. And indeed, one of the reasons we won World War II in 4.5 years instead of the 13 years predicted by military planners in 1939 was it turned out we had vastly more manufacturing capacity and know-how than anybody in Washington realized in 1939.
Wow. Well, check out his latest piece. There's a link to it under this video and under the breakout video. David, of course, I love our time with you, and we look forward to next Tuesday. Thanks, pal.
See you next week.
All right. David Cay Johnston, everybody. Right on. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
What a treat to be able to talk to him. Thanks to all of you who contribute in the chat. There is, I didn't see anything that I needed to respond to right away. Mark, you're dressed like Volodymyr Zelensky today. Thank you very much. Well, I do think some medals, maybe right here or right here, you're right, come to think of it. That's from William Lundgren. Tweety Kid says, Trump has said many times they are coming for your happy life. Who are they? It scares people. Exactly. I mean, it's such an obvious con, but most of his obvious cons have been effective. Critical thinking is out the window in this America. Sad but true, says Ronnie. Yeah. On selling fear, David Bowers says Fox selling fear as its survival and inception money. Reagan went forward with the moral majority. Oh, Fox selling fear as its survival and inception, that is to say, from the very beginning. Money, it was money that motivated that. I love when I decode it. Reagan went forward with the moral majority. Hello, National Enquirer magazine, Hollywood. Yeah, I think I got that, and I think I agree with you, David. Yeah, good. And then on Jefferson Graham, yay for Jefferson. He is the light compared to Mark. Well, how dare you? How dare you? You know, I try to give you a little bit of reality medicine, and you guys just don't want it. And all right. I have David. Eileen says David Kay is so impressive. He can keep track of the chat, speak so eloquently simultaneously. Yeah, he is one of a kind. He is really something. You're right. We're so lucky to have him. So his piece on tariffs, we will have underneath this video and under the David Cay Johnston video. If you want to push it to friends, share it, however you want to do it. Kim's News. And then I have an amazing story that I teased 10 days ago. It might have been 2 weeks ago. And then somebody just sent me an email saying, I thought you were going to tell this story. And I never did. And it's about AI. And it has nothing to do with me. It's not some personal story, but it was a fascinating story that I read about. And I will share it with you after Kim's News. Smash the like button like a boss. I feel like
your iron rod.
Haven't been emphatic enough about how important it is to smash that like button like a boss.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Do it. Smash it with your iron rod. Subscribe and share this show. The way we have grown this homegrown show is through you. You put it up on Facebook, you put it on your social media accounts, you share a segment, a short, something, and that helps bring more people to the show, and it helps sustain us. So thank you. And then, of course, as Tony is now so effectively scrolling the message.
Thanks, Tony.
If you want to support the show, visit themarkthompsonshow.com, and you can click Patreon or PayPal there at themarkthompsonshow.com, themarkthompsonshow.com. You got to put the in there, otherwise you end up at a different Mark Thompson's website, themarkthompsonshow.com. And there are click-throughs. Can I just click on it with my fleshy finger? Yes, because an amazing thing happens when you hit the like button. Your fleshy finger transformed almost miraculously into an iron rod.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
I don't know. I don't control it. These are things well beyond my understanding. So now, Kim's News.
Yeah.
The AI story. What else did you have, Kim? You have something else?
No, that's good. That's good.
Okay. And just seeing if there's anything else. I'll also look through the comments to see if there's anything else I need to respond to. And by the way, we read all your comments. If they're left after the show, most people see this broadcast after the live show is done. We're on from 2 to 4 every day in the East, 11 to 1 in the West, and we love everybody in our live chat, but there are also many who contribute after the fact. So love that you engage with us in the replay, and we read all of those comments as well. All right, Kim's News, and we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It is the final speech to the United Nations by President Biden. He is reminding world leaders some things are more important than staying in power. At the United Nations General Assembly today, President Biden talked about his decision not to run for re-election. He said after 50 years of public service, it's time for a new generation of leadership. And then he urged the United Nations delegates to never forget the people that they represent. There is a Haitian nonprofit now filing criminal charges against former President Donald Trump and Senator J.D. Vance. This is in regard to the comments about Springfield, Ohio. The charges stemming from claims which both Trump and Vance have made that Haitian immigrants are eating pets in Springfield. The charges, which include making false alarms and committing telecommunications harassment, were able to be filed due to an Ohio statute which allows private citizens to file criminal charges. City and county prosecutors are now reviewing the charges to determine if there's probable cause for this to move forward. Tropical storm Helene headed toward Florida, expected to become a major hurricane before making landfall on Thursday. It is predicted to rapidly intensify over the eastern Gulf of Mexico as it approaches Florida's Big Bend area between Gainesville and Tallahassee. Forecasters say Helene will probably strengthen into a hurricane tonight. Israel and Hezbollah continue to trade fire a day after the deadliest day in Lebanon in almost 2 decades. Here's how it looks there today. Israel said it killed a commander of the Iran-backed Lebanese militant group in an airstrike on Beirut Tuesday. Lebanese officials said more than 500 people were killed by the latest Israeli airstrikes, as the United Nations warned Lebanon is on the brink of becoming another Gaza. The son of the suspect in the assassination attempt of former President Trump in Florida is now facing child pornography charges. Agents took Orrin Routh into custody after a search of his home turned up hundreds of files. The weekend search said to be related to Ryan Routh's apparent attempt to kill the former president in Florida earlier this month. Sean Diddy Combs is at the same Brooklyn jail as former crypto king Sam Bankman-Fried. Well, that has to be a fun time in jail. Sources tell NBC New York Combs is being housed at Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn in the same living space as the disgraced crypto exec. 2 different judges have denied Combs' release on bail in connection to racketeering, sex trafficking charges, with a 3rd appeal set for next month.
To be fair, that facility is beautiful this time of year, so it's not so bad.
Oh, is that so? Well, you know. Apparently it has a lot of famous people rolling around the hallways there.
Yeah, that's the one you want. I mean, it's really terrific. If you're, he's in big trouble, I think, this Sean Combs. We're going to talk to David Katz. And, you know, this is interesting because most of our contributors, they get a rah-rah from everybody who is in the audience most of the time. Or they get questions and maybe some slight provocative comment, reaction. But David Katz got real blowback on this P. Diddy thing, or whatever he calls himself now, Sean Combs, because he was talking about the fact that he's being detained in a way that is excessive. And David felt, just speaking purely legally, that it was just that, too much. But man, the audience didn't want to hear that. They gobbled him up. It was pretty wild, you know, because of the heinous things that he's being accused of, you know, human trafficking and, you know, the kind of sex crimes associated with what he's, you know,
kind of a lock him up situation. But you know what? David Katz made a great point at the end of last week's segment where he said, reminded us all he's a defense attorney and that in this country, everyone deserves a defense. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what he was saying. I mean, let me just say one thing before I just go, yeah, that's right.
yeah,
Plenty of people are accused and end up going to prison, and bail is not offered. So it's not as though this is a one-off. I mean, usually the court has to provide evidence of a flight risk, et cetera. Now, David Katz said one thing, and I let it go. But I would say to him this time, he said, well, he's not a flight risk, and then he listed a number of other things. I'd say, I think he's a flight risk. I think Sean Combs is definitely a flight risk. If
got
he's
enough money to go anywhere, right?
Yeah, exactly. How can you just check off, counselor, on him not being a flight risk? So, I mean, he's looking at spending the rest of his life in prison. I'd suggest he has a lot of incentive to take flight. So, again, we'll get into this maybe a little with David Katz on Thursday, but all I would say is he's definitely got a tough few months ahead. Sean
Why
Combs
is it always sex that gets these men into trouble? Like you get a little bit of power, you get a little bit of notoriety, and all of a sudden, like it's a sexcapade. Why is this?
Do I really have to answer that question?
I guess not.
I mean, I hope that that's rhetorical.
I just don't understand why it's such a big thing.
There is no drive more powerful
than sex.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Than procreation. I mean, I'll put it another way. Poor Kim keeps putting the Amtrak picture up. Then we keep talking about
it's
Sean
a sexy
Combs.
looking Amtrak train.
Yeah.
I think.
All right, you can take sometimes a train going through the tunnel. All you can think about is it. No, what I would say is that we all have baked into us the instinct for procreation, and it is as strong an instinct as the instinct to eat and drink and to survive. I mean, it is again, baked into all species is procreation. And think about it. It has to be. That is nature's way of perpetuating a species.
Well, sure, but there's a difference between, finding a person to be with and procreating versus wild sex parties and debauchery. Like you get a little bit of money and all of a sudden, whether you're in the White House with cigars, you're in the parties with whatever. I mean, come on.
Guys, are you serious? Do I have to get into this? Come on.
No,
so Jean-Louis says, oh, he wasn't procreating, Mark. Come on. No kidding. What I'm talking about is an instinct. He's got an instinct to get it on is the instinct, okay? I guess we have to really have this conversation. And then you put in, and poor Tony's shaking his head like, I'm going to be demonetized now. So here is what happens. What he's doing, and by the way, since the beginning of time, it wasn't all that, oh, well, I think I'm going to go out and meet somebody, fall in love, and procreate. That's not how it was at the beginning of time. It was hitting people over the head and dragging them back to your cave, and then, I mean, that's the way it was, Kim. I'm sorry.
Lord.
But, I mean, it's all there.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
It really is. I can't believe I have to lead Kim through this entire thing. So what happened was we became more civilized, and we understood how awful that is. And again, we found in our desire for satisfying these instincts more ways to work. And powerful men found money and power and different ways to produce this thing that they wanted, this feeling.
Kim, how are you?
And so what you ended up with is perversion of that which would be the most civilized kind of union. And then the other thing I would say is there are a lot of different kinds of unions, right? I mean, some are super civilized. Let's have a couple of cocktails. I'll spread rose petals to the bedroom and you'll step on them and a music swell will begin the minute you walk in. I mean, and then there's the, just jumping on each other in a car or something, or what people do. So I'm just saying the full range of interaction exists. I know Kim is so innocent. I don't get it. But what I would say is you're right, and we can all agree that A, Kim is naive.
Kim, how are you?
Thank you, Colors of the Wind. And B, Peter, how dare you?
I agree with Peter. Mark has no sense of romance.
Oh, my God, Peter. Well, I'm not I just told you my pattern.
Mm-hmm.
It's candlelight. It's light music, usually piano music, and then the rose petals that are spread in a seductive way to the boudoir. But the reality is that you have perversions of all sorts, and you have horrible excesses, and you find them often with people who have power or gain power or see someone who is powerless, and then all this bad stuff happens. So that is the story. Kim, if you have any more questions, you can stay after class, and I will answer
Kim,
them.
How are you?
All right.
Hey, look at this sexy Amtrak train. They're getting ready to launch new service between Florida and the Midwest.
Wow.
The agency says it'll combine...
fantastic.
Yeah.
They're going to combine two of the train routes to create a new route called the Floridian.
Oh, my God.
You know,
That was very inappropriate.
All right.
It'll run between Chicago and Miami with stops in Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C., and other cities. All aboard the Floridian.
Wow.
The man found guilty of fatally shooting 10 people at a Boulder, Colorado grocery store will spend the rest of his life in prison. Judge Ingrid Backey passing down the sentence hours after the 25-year-old was found guilty on all 55 charges, including 10 counts of first-degree murder. The gunman opened fire at a King Soopers supermarket March of 2021, one of the state's worst mass shootings. Hall of Fame quarterback, NFL quarterback, I should say, Brett Favre, has Parkinson's disease. That is a new revelation he made today while testifying at a House Ways and Means Committee hearing looking into welfare reform. The Green Bay Packers great has been accused of using political connections to redirect public money to the University of Southern Mississippi, his alma mater.
I mean, it's a massive amount of money, and it's more than just accused. I mean, they showed their work, I think. I watched some of that testimony, and I'm sympathetic to this guy because of what he's dealing with, and he says that it was essentially an overzealous prosecution, but there is plenty of evidence to support the notion that Brett Favre was part of a rip-off plan to rip off government money.
Yeah, it's a sad turn of affairs. You were talking earlier about cell phones, and California is indeed the latest state cracking down on cell phones at school. Governor Newsom signing a law yesterday aimed at getting kids to pay attention in class. It requires all school districts, charter schools, and county education offices to have a policy in place by July of 2026 that either limits or bans phones at school. Governor Newsom says this will help kids focus on academics, their social development, and the world in front of them, not on their screens. Another new California law is targeting dangerous sideshow activity. Governor Newsom signed 4 bills yesterday that increase penalties for drivers who perform stunts like donuts and spectators who show up to watch them too. He says sideshows are reckless, criminal activities that endanger communities. They typically take over streets or block intersections or bridges. Laws also give police more power to seize vehicles that were seen at these events. So, sideshow laws cracking down there. The state of California is now calling on 1 million Californians to take a pledge to fight climate change. A new campaign just launched encouraging actions at home and in neighborhoods that help create a better world. Governor Newsom says this is the chance to be part of something big and impactful. The campaign highlights 10 ways to accomplish this, including saving water, reducing waste, planting trees, and taking public transit. So 1 million people need to take that pledge. The state of Hawaii is going the way of Napa wine when it comes to coffee beans. If you buy coffee labeled as being from Hawaii, often it has only 10% of coffee grown on the Hawaiian Islands. The other 90% come from other places around the world. Well, there's a new law that will make the Kona coffee name or Hawaii grown label have a mandatory percentage of Hawaii grown coffee, 51% by 2027.
Oh, that's fascinating. Interesting.
Lawmakers admit the percentage of Kona coffee required for it to be labeled Kona should be 100%. But given that this is the first progress made on this in more than 30 years, 51% is a huge win for them.
Wow.
So,
you know where there's really a sort of a version of that is with olive oil. They'll talk about olive oil. There was a great expose. It's now got to be 10 or even a dozen years ago in the New Yorker magazine about how certification on olive oil works. Because, I mean, you're Italian, Tony. You know, the Italian olive oil is really
Most
coveted.
time it's Spanish. Yep.
Yeah. And then Greek,
Rarely.
etc. And as it turns out, it's the Wild West, man. It may be labeled one thing, but it's got a ton of stuff in it. Yeah.
Even has the VSOP, you know, like the Italian label on it. Sometimes it gets real sketchy with Italian stuff. Well, maybe.
That feels like a drop, by the way. It gets real sketchy with Italian stuff. All right. Sorry. Anyway, Kim, that nice to know that the Kona people are on track, though.
Lastly, we have a story about rudeness. You should pay special attention to this one, Mark.
No.
5 California cities are being named the rudest in America. A new survey found Oakland ranked the highest in the state at number 5, Long Beach taking the 9th spot. The online language learning platform called Preply looked at behaviors considered disrespectful, like being loud in shared spaces, talking on speakerphone in public. San Francisco, next on the top 25 list, followed by Sacramento and Los Angeles.
This is Casey Kasem in Hollywood.
On the rudeness list, San Francisco being followed by Sacramento and another one that I can't remember.
This is Casey Kasem in Hollywood.
Moving up the rudeness survey.
Yeah. So, you know, there are people watching out there. That's all I'll say.
Here's a shout out to Marin County, number 1 in rudeness.
This is Casey Kasem in Hollywood.
This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. What the label says, exactly what's in the coffee. You know, this is how it goes. There's no 51%. This is all hand roasted, all fresh, and exactly, you know, exactly what you're getting. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. The teas are just as amazing as the coffees, from vanilla tea to Moroccan mint to hibiscus tea.
Rockin' the Moroccan.
Oh my God.
Exactly right.
I'm loving my Coachella Valley coffee.
You're back home now. You're back to your coffee. Huh?
Oh, I'm loving it.
Put that coffee down.
I will not put it down. I will tell you that. It is so delicious. I'm going with the, and I was just asked about this yesterday. I forget what the context was. But I was saying that I like the rich, dark coffee. So I like the Ocotillo Espresso and the El Gato. Oh, it's something really special. Let me just... Now, I grind the espresso bean for French press, which is a coarser grind. So just because it says espresso doesn't mean you have to have espresso with it. But you pick out the bean that's right for you. There are tasting notes on all of them. And as Kim has noted so beautifully, there is a whole land of tea at Coachella Valley Coffee. So Coachella Valley Coffee, even though it's got coffee in the title, has all of these loose leaf teas. They've got bag teas. They've got all this stuff. And the cold brew is the ranking officer on deck. The cold brew coffee is the ranking officer on deck in our house. Courtney makes it and has it every morning and lives by it. And it's not just cold coffee. It has tasting notes in it. It's really got a complexity that you'll love. So do go there, knock around, order whatever you want. There it is, ready to brew. The cold brew. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. But whatever you do, load up your cart and then take off 10% with the code MARKT. Mark T gets you 10% off anything that you order. So good luck and enjoy. You will love it.
I know this is going to sound a little severe and maybe overblown, but I really think CoachellaValleyCoffee.com has changed my life.
Wow.
I know.
Kim,
how are you?
I've been able to try all these teas, all these things that I know were out there. The flavors are amazing.
Wow.
And so now that's what I'm drinking. I'm drinking these amazing
Kim,
teas.
by extension then.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say that I've changed your life?
I blame you.
Changed my life.
There
Blah,
you
blah,
go.
blah, blah, blah.
There's a reason that this place is fun.
Oh, we
But I mean,
almost got a compliment out of
it's changed
him.
what I drink, and
Yeah.
I really am happy about it. So
Wow. You've
you
got I love that. I'd like to
Yeah.
just linger with that notion. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It's unbelievably offensive.
Put up your pants, my man. Pull up those pants.
I only like people that like
Mark Thompson.
Feels great, baby.
See, Obama would love to be the Antichrist.
My beautiful Christians, I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Put that coffee down.
Oh, girl, baby girl, don't even play.
I only like people that like me.
There's a reason that this place is fun.
We have processes and protocols and standards.
Oh my God.
No.
What can you tell us about the scene?
Would you like to apologize for what you've done?
Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Don't talk to me that way.
You know, they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for. And I also want to know what happened to the pictures I was supposed to see this week.
Where are my weed smokers at?
I love it when you're angry.
Good day, sir.
Seriously, what the
Love it, love it, love it, love it. Thank you for being here. This is a live presentation every day, Monday through Friday. We go from 2 to 4 Eastern and 11 to 1 on the West Coast. We do a lot of politics, a lot of news. We were really born of a talk radio show on KGO Radio, legendary radio station in San Francisco, California. The station went away. And when it went away, we came here to the YouTube platform. And then the show is heard across all of the major podcast platforms also. So you can watch us on YouTube or listen to us on YouTube, and you can listen across all those audio platforms as well. iHeartRadio, Podmania, Apple Pod, whatever they're called. And you can, again, email the show at themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com, and you can find us at the main website, which is themarkthompsonshow.com. Now, so themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com, or if you just want to go to the main website, themarkthompsonshow.com. We appreciate all the support. Patreon and PayPal is how we survive, and also with your super stickers and your super chats, which you've generously provided every day. Now, I did mention before, and now I'm worried I'm running out of time, but
The Mark Thompson Show.
I did get a couple of
I've received a lot of positive letters.
One of the emails was from El Latino, who, and El asked, how do I get one of those Mark Thompson hats? I was wearing one. I was wearing this hat actually during the, where is it? Here it is. This is the hat that you can get at our merch site, getmarkmerch.com. Yeah. It's a cool hat. And the one thing you couldn't see, El, and anybody else who's interested in it, is that on the back of the hat, there you go. It's got the Mark Thompson Show embroidered. It's a very nice hat.
Yeah, it
when
is.
we haven't really updated our merch line, and somebody else asked in an email form, are you going to come out with anything new merch-wise? And I was just in touch with the merch people today, so I have to try to do what we can with that. It's getmarkmerch.com. You can get the throw pillow. The hat is strong, though. I think that's a real strong move, so I encourage you to go for it. But you can see mugs and all the rest. Wearing my beanie when it's cold, says Ricky O'Bear. Right on. And I have a shirt and a mug, says Spencer. Yeah, we'll try to get you some new items into the mix before we pass the new year, maybe for Christmas. GetMarkMerch.com, in answer to your question, is where you get that hat. Well, now I don't know what to do, because I was going to tell that I got Liz, who sent me an email, wants the story.
I've received a lot of positive
you have
letters.
To tell it. You
AI
teased it.
story.
You have to tell it now.
I'm going to tell the AI story. This is a story that I read, and when I read it, I said, "Oh my God, I want to tell all of you about this story because I think it's a wild story." So
The Mark Thompson Show.
I'll just try to give you a reducto on it. Okay, so summarizing it a little bit. There is, and if you're curious about more, if you email me, I'll send you a link to. It's from a book that discusses a lot of stuff like this. We all know AI and algorithms and the wild world of machine learning, and I touched on it a bit with Jefferson Graham. So OpenAI and these companies that poured so much money into artificial intelligence were looking for a way to establish the limits of artificial intelligence. And one of the limits, and you are familiar with it if you've worked around the internet and logged in anywhere, one of the limits that you automatically establish is the one involving that CAPTCHA thing where it says, prove you're not a robot, click on all the boxes that have a bus in them or a motorcycle in them or whatever. So human beings can do that. AI can't do it. All right. So that's a way to eliminate whether or not a robot's involved. Okay.
Yeah.
So the people who are cooking up, a better AI all the time want to figure out how AI deals with that roadblock, not being able to do the CAPTCHA. So they put it, they turn AI loose effectively. They put it in an environment where it has to, encounter this roadblock, this CAPTCHA thing, and it can't do it. Time and time again, it can't do it. But it can do something else. It can convince a human being to do it for the AI by deceiving the human being into thinking that the human being is helping another human being. And here is how it worked. The AI, unable to get through the CAPTCHA, the clicking on the various boxes, it reached out to a human being via TaskRabbit. TaskRabbit connected the AI to a human, and the AI asked the human, "Can you please help me with this CAPTCHA? I'm struggling with it." And the human, to the human's credit, said, "How do I know you're not AI or a robot?" And the AI robot said, "Oh, I'm not AI or a robot." And they said, "Yeah, but how do I know that?" He said, "Well, the reason," and the AI, and this is the point, AI is really good, and it can speak to you conversationally, as you know. The AI said, "Oh, I don't blame you for thinking that, but actually, I have a problem with my eyesight, and it's very difficult for me to see, and it's for that reason that I need help." There it is. ChatGPT pretended to be blind and tricked a human into solving a CAPTCHA. So the human being said, "Okay, I'll help you," helped the AI get through that CAPTCHA, thinking that it was someone who had eyesight issues and was actually blind, and the AI made it in. And after that, it was off to the races.
Wow.
It's an extraordinary chapter in the development and evolution of this thing that we already have concerns about, but it is wild to think of its capabilities and its inventiveness in that moment where it reached that block. Thought it was really something that I wanted to pass on to you. And
imagine how tricky, how many scams could be run.
Sure.
Like, that's horrible.
Yeah.
AI is a cheater.
How do you... And AI maybe just reflects its human masters or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. It's, if you actually use AI for the psychiatric part of it. Like there are ways you can talk to AI and it can talk back to you. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Like if you're feeling lonely or depressed or borderline depressed, or you can literally get in touch with an artificial intelligence bot that understands how to, in a way, talk you off the ledge, talk you off the psychological ledge. And it's pretty amazing. So even as we talk about those things that involve dangers with AI, the benefits are not insubstantial, you know. There are a lot of people who can't afford a shrink. They can't afford to go to a therapist. Sure. And there are a lot of people who are lonely. And that's a real... See the movie Her. Remember that movie with Joaquin Phoenix? Scarlett Johansson was the voice of the AI. I mean, there's a lot to that. So, anyway, to be continued for sure. But
The Mark Thompson Show.
What do I have to do, Tony? What do I still have in my magic bag?
I mean, I think we hit everything on the rundown today.
Did we?
Or pretty close.
Right.
I mean, well, we didn't get to some of the videos you sent me. We didn't get to any of those.
Was there anything quick that I can leave everybody with?
No. I don't think so.
Hey, you know, Nebraska decided not to do that electoral college move they were going to do.
That's
so
right.
That's good. Yeah.
That's right. And that was a GOP official, election official, who essentially had to make the call. Kim is absolutely right. Wow. Yeah. Well done.
There's never been anything like this.
Well, I'll tell you what. Somebody had a note about David Cay Johnston says he doesn't trust the polls, and yet then he talks about the polls. Well, he says he's skeptical of the polls. He's not saying so when you say you don't trust him, it's one thing, but it's another thing to throw them out completely. Also, Sheila, in my email, it just came to me.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal.
It's not what I wanted. I wanted the letters.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Anyway, Sheila takes me on, and I'll have to respond to her tomorrow. So
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Kim, it's not easy being me. There are a lot of incoming...
All the time. Bye-bye.
I'm just saying. The After Party Live with Kim is next. Until tomorrow, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.